I wanted to make a video where I show you how I made my recent rain scene that I animated in Desmos graphing calculator. Desmos is just a free online calculator where you can graph mathematical functions and inequalities, and a lot of people, including myself, use it to make art and animation, so I want to show you some of the methods I use to do that. So to make the hills, we want to use sine curves so they go up and down, but we add or subtract a linear piece as well to make it slanted like a line might be, and then combining that with the sine component allows it to go up and down. And we're going to make it super low frequency so that it looks like these long rolling hills. But you can make it however hilly you want. If you want to make it a little more hilly, you might do a higher frequency, but it's all just about what you want to do. You can make it a little bit more slanted if that sounds good to you. And then we use inequalities to color the hills in. And then with one of them, I have an extra like duplicate layer that is darker to make it look clearly separate from the other hill. So now we have a little bit of perspective. And then I added this base ground layer. And again, that just kind of shows some separation in the landscape. So now if we want to add a sky layer, this is pretty easy. We just want to do another inequality going upwards. And again, you can do whatever color you want here. I wanted to go with something a little bit more purple. So I have like a purple over a blue. And speaking of colors, you can add whatever color you want. You can see here I've added a bunch of colors. There might be a better way to do this, but this is just the way I like to do it, just putting the colors that I want to use. So now we have our purple sky. Um, and now we can get to my favorite part, which is adding the clouds. I'm going to hop over to another tab to show you this. So here's the clouds I'm working with, and I can expand this so you can see the full equation here. So what we have is kind of these ellipses that are also a little wavy. So if we get rid of this sine piece, you can see now it's very smooth, right? So having the sine piece makes it look more wavy like clouds would look. And this random component is making a bunch of separate clouds that are just slightly offset and overlapping. So if I only wanted 5 clouds, then I could change this to 5. And now you can see I have much less, or you could make more. But the key is the more you have, then you can have them overlapping and kind of make them look more like they would in the sky. And then you make them really transparent so you can see those different layers. And this is something else that you can mess with just up to your preference. But they're just these ellipse equations with these ellipse inequalities with this sine component to make them look kind of wavy like rolling clouds. So these are also the same clouds that I use in my sunset landscape, my sunset animation, and I just think it looks really nice and kind of does look like real clouds might look. So we can throw this in to our rain, and now we also have the moon, which I want to talk about. So the moon is just obviously a circle, and so here's our equation for a circle. Let's get rid of the clouds for a sec. So here's our moon, and you can decide how big you want the moon to be. So I have r as being the radius squared of the moon. So you can make your moon smaller, you can make your moon bigger. But then we have this kind of cool effect where we can add this glow, right? So we use a list like I have here. Maybe I can show you a different list so you get an idea of how this works. So if I make a list of like 0, 50, 100, right? And then I go and I add that list to my radius of my other circle. It makes a couple overlapping circles with a radius of, it's going to be a radius of of 10, and then we are adding in this 50 and this 100 to add a couple more circles, right? So what I'm doing up here with G is I'm making more and more circles overlapping, and then I'm making it super transparent so it kind of creates this glow feature, right? So what R1 is it's going to show how separated the different circles are. So if I make R1 smaller versus R1 bigger, it's more or less overlapping circles. And that's another thing that you can just mess around with however you want, right? And now we have this kind of glow feature. So I really like using lists to make this works for lights, it works for sun and moon. A really great trick to have for your if you're going to animate using this. So here's our moon. and it has a nice glow around it now. Okay, so now we can add the rain. And the key with the rain is you might want just like a bunch of points, right? So I have, okay, I didn't mean to turn them all on. I just want to show you like a single point first. And that can kind of be like a raindrop, right? Move it up a little bit. So we have a single point. But if I want more points, I can add a bunch of random values to this point and it's going to distribute them. So if I want like 50 random points and I want them spaced out by about 2 units or 20 units or 40 units, okay, now I have a bunch of dots. And then I can also move them in the y direction. So I could say plus 50, random 50 in the y direction. And as with everything else I do, there might be better ways to do this, but this is just how I like to do it. And now I have a bunch of dots off in space that can kind of work as raindrops. So for my actual rain, I did 10,000 random points, and they're spaced out a lot, like spaced out by 1,000 units in the x direction, and then spaced out a lot in the y direction as well, so that I have a lot of them. And now this is the key with any animation. You need to have this sliding value that is going to allow certain things to move. So in this case, H is controlling the motion of the rain. And I need a lot of these points because I want the slider to be able to play and for the points to be able to move, and I don't want to ever run out of rain. So that's why I have so many points that are attached to this slider so that I can have kind of a longer rain scene. And I make a bunch of copies of this cell because the more copies you make, the more droplets you're going to have. So here's 10,000 random, and here's 10,000 more, and we can just keep adding them. And then again, I have them spaced out enough that there's a bunch off screen that are just going to come on screen and kind of simulate rain. And you can see that it's only appearing below the clouds to kind of look more like real rain. I don't want the dots all over the screen. So how I do that, I made another layer of sky here to kind of to mimic the sky that I already have in place. But it's layered over top of everything else, and it's layered over the rain. So now the rain is only going to appear below this layer. So now it's not going to be like in front of my moon or in front of my clouds. And so now if I hit play, I can see the rain moving. And you can see it's getting kind of choppy. So now that's when I use Desmos, which is an add-on. It's like a Chrome extension, or there's other ways you can use it. But this is how I record, and it's just going to record all this for me, and that strings it together as one smooth animation, so it doesn't look so choppy. And it's going to look choppy if you start to make things really complex. So I just capture this, and then it's going to make the slider move, and then it's going to string it together as one long smooth animation. Okay. So now that you have it raining, you can add whatever details you want. So I've added a house and some trees, and I have my slider attached to the rain that is also attached to a little person moving with his umbrella. But it's all up to what kind of details you want to add. And as I make more videos, I can show you more tools for adding components to your animations to make them a little bit more interesting. But I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not an artist. I just know math, and I think it's kind of fun to get creative with it. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe and watch future videos if you want to try to learn to make your own animations in Desmos.